Welcome to Camp Soft Landing. Please enjoy our amenities. We have a tea house. You can go over and have some tea and conversation, get rehydrated. This is our playa home, and we're open to you. So thanks for being here with us. My name is Mike Osborne. My playa name is Trip. No one here knows my actual real name, but now you do. I am the co-manager here at Camp Soft Landing, and as mentioned, I'm also a life coach. I have had a lifelong fascination with trying to understand how we experience reality, how we form the opinions that we have, and even more importantly, how can we change them? And how does that manifest into behaviors that we actually have? It seems to be very, very difficult to change our lives. It's like we get going in one direction, and it's very difficult to change course. Even when we have all the intention in the world, our bodies seem to keep going in one direction. And it takes a lot of effort to change course. So today what I want to talk about is how I believe there's a myth, rather than a myth, I would say we have an incorrect model of how our consciousness works and how we understand our behaviors and how we affect that change. And that's what this talk is about. And I have a few things I think will be fun to sort of give you an example of, in yourself, how this process works. So the first thing I want to say is that who here has made a resolution to change something in their life and then didn't follow through? Oh yeah, it's universal. And you know why you didn't follow through? Because you're bad people. That's the reason.
I knew it.
That's the story we have, right? It's like, I didn't lose that weight because I don't have enough willpower, or I'm not disciplined enough, or there's some other failing that I have, because obviously the good thing would be for me to change this behavior to create this change in my life, but I'm not up to the task, right? This is what we face all the time. And I believe that it comes from an incorrect model, and that model is that we have our rational ego conscious self that is in control of everything. And so whenever something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we personalize that fault. It's because we have done something wrong. And what I'd like to do is present to you guys a different model, and I think one that has more explanatory power for us. And the different model will help us understand how it actually works with us, and even the better news is how we can actually affect real change when we want to. And there's good news and bad news, and I'll be telling you the good news and bad news throughout the whole thing. But in general, it's a positive note, and I'll get to that. So, hello? Okay. So I want to start with, I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Haidt. Does anyone know him? He's a social psychologist. Anyone heard of him before? He's a freaking amazing dude. I mean, I have academic lust after this guy. He's so good. Okay. Is this the bad one?
It could be.
Okay. Try this. Hello? Hello? Okay, good. All right, awesome. Anyway, Jonathan Haidt. In one of his books, it's called The Happiness Hypothesis, he gives a model of how to think about this thing that I was talking about, rather than the conscious ego being the master of all. In reality, our behaviors are almost completely dictated by a very large unconscious things. There's lots of things going on in your body you have no conscious control over. Your heartbeat, your respiratory system, all the chemical processes are going on. Your body's doing all these things without your consciousness. And that is the vast majority of who you are. And the ego and the consciousness is a very, very small part of the whole thing. And so the model that he uses and what he suggests is that of an elephant with a rider. And the elephant is representative of all the automated processes that your body is going through, including your automated thought processes and your automated behaviors. You know, reaching for that beer when you know you shouldn't. You know, dating that person you know you really shouldn't. Why are we doing these things to ourselves? It's because our consciousness isn't actually in control. There's this vast, huge animal that is actually in control. And so the rider may want to say, go this direction, but the elephant's going to go where he's going to go. So the whole problem here is to figure out how we can get the rider to communicate with the elephant and how to make them work together. Now, when they're fighting across purposes, this is when people are out of integrity. Right? You have this thought, and you have this mind, or this concept of someplace you want to go, but your body takes you somewhere else. So you're out of integrity. So this is the model that I'd like to work with. Now, I know that this seems a little esoteric and maybe different than the way you normally think about things, but I have an experiment here, and I'm hoping that this will demonstrate what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story. And when I listen to my story, go ahead and listen to my story. But mostly what I want you to do, instead of listening to my story so much, I want you to listen to yourself. And as I'm telling you this story, you're going to have a reaction, and it's going to be a pretty rational reaction. Okay, this is going to be something that I don't want you to process. I want you to pay attention to your immediate gut feeling for what I'm about to tell you, this story, okay? And then we're going to share some information about that, okay? So here's the story. This is from Jonathan Haidt also. There's a man and a woman called Bob and Sue. Sue is 24, Bob is 22. They're brother and sister. There's a family reunion at the family cabin happening over the weekend. And Bob and Sue arrived the night before to get everything ready. And as they are getting things ready, and they got everything beautiful, it's all set, but no one's there yet, they realize they're in a very special place. And they love each other very much. As a matter of fact, they decide to have a little experiment and make love with each other. Sue is on birth control. Bob decides to use a condom. There's no chance that there will be any procreation. But they have this beautiful experience together in this beautiful place. And as a result, they feel much closer to each other. And they are, they mutually decide that even though it was really beautiful and it was amazing, they'll never do that again, but it made them really super close. Okay. Were you paying attention to your internal reaction to that? Who had a negative reaction to my story? All right. Who wants to come up and tell me about their negative reaction?
Come on. Someone. Seriously, this is important. This is really important. Come on up. Come on. Tell me about your reaction.
Well, I'm not sure if this
What's
is...
your name?
Jane.
Hi,
I'm
Jane.
Jane. Hi. So I'm not sure if this is a negative or positive reaction. I'm not sure if it's a negative or a positive reaction. But part of me thought how wonderful, what a great experience for them. So that's a positive reaction. But the negative aspect of that is, wow, I wish I had had that, a similar experience to have been able to have had that with somebody.
Okay. Great.
No, that's fine. Who else had a negative experience?
I've actually already shared this little trip. My brother and I are actually the same ages apart. And when I had heard that, I was like, no. For me, that was too close to my own personal relationship with my brother, and I would not do that with my brother. And so for me, I just put so much of myself onto the story that, yeah, it was no. Just no.
Thank you. One more. Come on, I want to hear about your negative reaction. Come on, next level.
So I didn't actually hear that they were brother and sister, and when I heard that you had this beautiful connection and decided not to do it ever again, I was like, why wouldn't you? That was my negative reaction.
Well, when you heard their brother and sister, how did you react?
I was like, oh, that makes more sense. But I don't have any brothers or sisters, so I don't really feel any which way about
So this is actually a really horrible place to have this experiment. Because, why? Because we're all fucking open-minded, freaky hippie people. It's like, yeah, sure, go do what you want to do. But I think you can imagine that most people have a very visceral reaction to this. Even though rationally it sounds like a beautiful experience and everything, we feel like there's something wrong with that, right? They're brother and sister. We have a very ingrained taboo against incest, right? Who here remembers someone saying, "Don't ever have sex with your siblings"? Oh yeah? Was it? We had to point that out to you. Most of us get this message culturally. We're not taught a lesson in first grade, right? We get the information culturally, and maybe even genetically. We know that it's not a good thing for us to procreate close to each other. But the point of what I'm trying to say is, most people have a reaction to this story, even though there's no rational reason why they should. And if you seriously question them, and you say, you know, why is this a bad thing? I mean, I'm talking about people that really know it's a bad thing. You ask them, why is it a bad thing? And they'll come up with an objection or two that completely was answered by the story. And they'll get to a point where they don't know, they just know. Right? This is a bad thing because it is. And that's the elephant. That's the elephant. That's the thing that you don't have any control over. And this area manifests itself in lots of different ways in your life. You are a stew of reactions and behaviors that have been programmed into you since you were an infant. It's built into how we become socialized and civilized and members of the tribe. And it's a very positive survival mechanism. It's helped us survive in what physically weaker features to group together and stay cohesive. But it's not being of service to us when we don't have a direction. So, is it kind of clear what I'm talking about as far as this sort of elephant and thing? Is it clear? Because I'm going to be relying on this metaphor for the rest of the time. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's good.
Okay, good, thanks.
Cool.
So, I'm going to take this a little bit different direction, but we're tying it back together. This is part of the good news and bad news. Who here considers themselves an optimist? Yeah, most people. Who here considers himself a pessimist? Yeah, there are some. So, as it turns out, everyone has in their brains a circuit for approach and a circuit for withdrawal or escape. And this is a very basic survival thing. See something we like, we approach it. See something we don't like or is dangerous, and we withdraw or try to escape. And when they do brain scans of people that are optimists and pessimists, they see that that everyone has a dominant part of their brain either for approach or for withdrawal. And they can just sit there and ask a couple questions while people are being analyzed. They have nothing to do with whether they're optimists or pessimists. But they can watch the brain activity and whether, if it's stronger in one side or the other, they'll know whether they have a bias towards approach or a bias towards withdrawal. And that maps completely to whether they consider themselves an optimist or a pessimist. So, here's the good news. If you're an optimist, it's easier to change your life. Bad news, you're a pessimist, it's much harder to change your life. But you can still do it. It just takes more effort. So, we'll be going into kind of the details of how that works, but I want you to think about that and how it relates to yourself. And it's totally, Jonathan and I refers to it as the cortical lottery. Some people won the cortical lottery, some people didn't. I won the cortical lottery. I'm optimistic to a fault, but I'm beginning to understand people that aren't like, it's like, what's your problem? It's just, go do this stuff, it's so fun. Anyway, so we'll go ahead. All right, so how do we really affect change? How do we really affect change? We know the old model doesn't work very well, right? you just like have the willpower and you just drive through it and then you're a different person, right? Well, that's the rider trying to make the elephant go in a direction that it doesn't want to go. So the way that you actually affect real and lasting change is you slowly, repeatedly train the elephant. Just, who here has raised a puppy? Yeah, what do you have to do with the puppy? They don't get it on the first try, do they?
Lots of treats.
Right. What's the secret to raising a puppy?
Lots of treats and repetition.
Yeah, and consistency,
Yeah.
right? Consistently over and over and over and over. It's the same thing for us. Exact same circuit for us. If there's something you want to change, it takes consistent, small steps over and over and over again. And I'll talk about that process in a minute. But let's see here. There's another way to change things, and that is part of the problem with the elephant is that it's completely responsive to stimulus, right? It's going to respond to anything. It sees something it wants, it's going to approach it. It sees something it doesn't want, it's going to withdraw. What the gift of the rider is the ability to help make a decision. So one way to affect change in your life is to not be immediately responding to things, to any stimulus you get. And one of the main ways to be able to take control over that situation is to meditate, especially mindfulness meditation. So one of the main benefits of mindfulness meditation is that it's practice of feeling a stimulus and then creating a gap before you actually do the response. And in that gap is everything. That gap lies your freedom. That gap lies your power. Because that gap is the difference between an animal and a rational person. If all you're going to be doing is responding to stimulus all the time, you're literally the same as the animal. And that's what your elephant is. But if you really want to increase control over the elephant, you can work on expanding that gap and making decisions in that gap. So you get a response, and now you say, how do I want to respond to it? Or a stimulus, how do I want to respond to this? Rather than just immediately responding to it. And so by meditating and increasing that gap, you will gain more control over your mind, and you will create a stronger rider, is what you're going to do. Your rider will be much more efficient at training the elephant. So that's the first thing I'd like to suggest. So who here meditates regularly, does mindfulness meditation? Yeah, we have a few here. I'm going to walk over here. Roshar, you do? Okay. Kai, can you tell me about your meditation experience? Yeah, I know you're all comfortable.
No, seriously, with respect to what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that was one of the early benefits for me. One of the biggest early benefits for me was that capacity to notice the reaction, notice the animal reaction, the instinctual response of I want to get small and hide, I want to punch this person, whatever it might be. Recognizing that stimulus happen and just kind of being aware and still and watching it arise instead of having it immediately trigger a response. And so there's that little space to just kind of, we'll say the larger me for now. The larger me, or maybe the rider in this case, the rider has a chance to go, oh, how do we want to respond to this situation? And then there's that room for what you're talking about with training. Oh, I've decided I want to start responding in this way. Right? So maybe there's something I'm noticing happening a lot. There's a pattern. Because now I have the time to notice it. Oh, there it is again. There it is again. I want to start responding in this different way. And in the gap, it gives me that little space to go, oh, right, I'm doing this. Oh, yeah, right, I want to do this. Oh, right, I want to do this. Until that becomes the automatic thing. And so when I'm in that place where I'm not having as big a gap, I'm a little bit less resourced, now I'm starting to respond automatically in a different way.
Thank you. Thanks for supporting my point completely. Did a better job explaining it than I did. Is that clear to everyone? Does it seem appealing to you? Does it seem like maybe it might be worth the effort? Seriously, consider it. It'll change your life. I know we've said that before. People will say that, and it's a lot of work, but it will change your life. Yeah?
But I think that can be done without meditation.
I can't hear you.
I think you can reach that state and that awareness without meditation.
Without meditation.
Yeah.
Because your own life experience is what they teach you.
I would agree with you to a certain point. Meditation is a practice, and it's like going to the gym for your mind. There's some people who are naturally fit. And there's some people that can naturally do things without any problem at all, and they don't need to go to the gym. But for most of us, we need to go to the gym, and the gym for our mental processes is meditation. Just like you work out your body, you're exercising your mind with meditation. Having that as a basis will absolutely help you make good decisions going forward. And it's revolutionary. It's totally changed my life, and that's what I'm trying to share with you. This is something that really affects changing your life. So at least consider it. I have this great quote here. It's like, what if there was a pill that made you more tolerant, made you more positive, and made you happier? It had no side effects, and it was free. Would you take it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? That pill's meditation. I'm just telling you. That's what it is. You don't need a prescription. Okay. So, let's talk about affecting real change in life. And we've kind of been alluding to it as we've been going on here. But here's how it really works. The first step is to see what your default path is. Where are you going? Most people don't even think about where they're going. They're just going, right? This is the animal charging, or this is the elephant charging through life. You're just going where the elephant goes. So the first step is to say, do you want to go where the elephant's taking you? You know? Do you want to go where the kinds of food you're eating are taking you? Do you want to go where the career you've chosen is taking you? Is this really where you want to go? And make a conscious choice. And it might be, and that's fine. Keep going. But if it isn't, now we've got a task in front of us. We've got to change something. Because the default path is taking us someplace we don't want to go. So first get really clear on where you want to go. Okay? And then when we see where we want to go, now what we need to do is design a plan to get in that direction. And to slowly train and turn the elephant in the direction that we want to go. Now, I have a quick question here. Who here is like really physically fit and it's like pretty much effortless for them to work out all the time? Would anyone consider themselves that way? I know there's a lot of people who are physically fit, but it's a lot of effort. But is there anyone that's like natural? That we know these people, right? It's like they just love working out, and it's like, yay, I get to go to the gym, and so this is not me. I know it's like weirdos, but they do exist. They have what has happened is that their being is so ingrained in working out that is totally effortless because it's just who they are, right? That all the rituals and all the habits that go into working out have been totally ingrained in who they are, and it becomes effortless when you bring something into you so closely that it just is who you are and what you do. Then it is effortless. It takes a while to get to that point sometimes. But the point is if we want to get the elephant to go where we want it to go, we've got to get to the point where it's effortless. Because willpower enough is not enough. Okay? So, the way this is done is through intention, and through design, and through ritual and habit. So the idea is we say, let's say for instance, you have a particular goal. You want to lose 10 pounds, right? So the way we know that we're going to lose 10 pounds is we're going to eat 500 calories less every day. And we know that if we do this, we're going to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. Okay? So we know this. This is just thermodynamics and how bodies work and stuff. We know if we do this, it'll happen, right? So if we have to sit and make a decision every time, I just know overall I have to eat 500 calories less, but there's a piece of cake in front of me right now. It's like, is that going to help or hinder me? Well, it's probably going to hinder you, but in your mind you think, well, I'll just take it off someplace else, but you never do, right? It's like you eat the cake. So the idea is that you have to have a plan and a design, and you execute it every day always, over and over again, until your actions turn into habits or rituals, your rituals turn into habits, and your habits turn into a way of being. And when it becomes your way of being is when you've turned the elephant. And it takes slow, persistent change, ritualized, over and over again, until it becomes part of who you are, and then it becomes effortless. Because, you know, if you have to, another way I like to think about this is if you want to lessen the number of decisions you're making. Every time there's a decision to be made, there's a chance to make a wrong decision. But when it's just something of who you are, you just do it. It's not a decision. You wake up in the morning, you go to the gym. You just do it. And at first, you're like, you wake up, it's like nice and warm in bed. Should I get up and go to the gym? Yeah, it's so nice. Maybe, yes, I will. Maybe I will. And a lot of times you'll make the right choice. You say, yeah, I got to get out of bed and go to the gym. Sometimes you'll make the wrong choice. Like, I'm going to stay in bed. It's nice and warm. But it's a decision, right? And every time you make a decision, you have a chance to won't work out the way towards what you're trying to accomplish. So the object is to make fewer and fewer decisions by just committing to something and then just doing it. And the more you do that, the more effortless it becomes. And this is true of any kind of change you want to make. Anything you want to learn about, any sort of goal that you have, anything you're trying to create in your life. You just make a choice and do it over and over again until it becomes who you are. Now, this isn't rocket science. I mean, you know, ancient Chinese knew about this whole idea, and you can go through and look at some of the wise writings of the past, and they're all saying the same thing, but it doesn't seem like we're getting the message. So this is my attempt at trying to translate this for you guys. So, all right. Is there any questions about any of that? I mean, I know it seems pretty simple, but yeah, go ahead, Moshe. What do you got?
Yeah, so I find that I stop my rituals before they become habits, and I've always said that's just a willpower thing. Do you have any advice on how you stick with your rituals until they become habits?
Yeah, right. So one way I think about this is that you have a finite amount of willpower to spend every day. You have a willpower budget, right? So, you know, when we first sort of learn about things and we want to like make our lives better, we're like, oh, we're going to lose weight, we start working out, and we're going to like get a new job, a new boyfriend or whatever. You know, it's like we're going to do all these changes at once, and we don't have the willpower budget for all that. So, to answer your question is, one, make it something, one thing only. This is the thing you're going to concentrate on for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Just this one thing. Don't worry about anything else. You'll get to that. But the most important thing you want to change in your life right now, and you work on that one thing. And you use your entire willpower budget on that one thing, right? So you need your willpower budget in order to keep on that path until we get to that point where it's effortless. And you stay on 6 to 8 weeks and you're there. You just got to get through the hard part. The hard part is making sure you use your willpower budget for one thing. If you spread it too thinly, you're not going to get anything done. I know that's been my experience. I don't know with you guys. Right? It's like you just don't have enough willpower to last throughout the whole day. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see here. So, what I wanted to sort of leave you guys with is the idea that to do this process that I discussed of, first off, getting really clear about where you're trying to go that might be different from the way you're going now, and then designing all those actions. Anyone can do it on their own. It's not a problem to do it on your own. But what I've personally found, and I know a lot of other people find, is that coaching is a great way to do this sort of process. And it doesn't, and we have this idea that we should be strong enough to do it ourselves, we just have to do it, right? But it doesn't seem to work that way for most people to actually affect change in their life, to put these plans in place, execute on them, and get them to the point where they're effortless. It takes a lot of accountability and focus and willpower to make these small changes that eventually add up into large changes in your life. And so I just wanted to put a final pitch into you to consider coaching. Consider getting coaching from anyone. Anyone's qualified to do it. But but have an external structure to support you in the change you're trying to affect in your life. It will, you can do it on your own, but having a coach will get you there a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than any other way that I've been able to see. I have a coach, and I've affected great change in my life. Most people that finally find this to be the case are amazed by the results. Ra's not here, is he?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, where is he? Yeah. Do you mind giving me a testimonial about what happened to you in like a very short period of time?
Yeah, sure. I got recommended a life coach from Trip. I got recommended a life coach. It's okay. I got recommended a life coach. I've done it in the past. I had a meta goal of having a digital representation of my artwork online for the 3-month process. We achieved my meta goal within the first 3 sessions alone. Just that fast. And now we have this giant window of time to keep creating. And in that amount of time, I think I painted 12 different paintings. I wrote and memorized probably 10 to 17 new pieces of poetry. We got a car. I got a job. Like literally, it was astounding.
This guy's a total plan, isn't it?
It was 4 months. We accomplished everything, top to bottom. We worked on my family. We worked on my relationship, and we literally achieved absolutely everything we were working on, plus way more. It was mind blowing. And we only met 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week. Give yourself 60 minutes of checking in with yourself, or some additional outside help to really align your compass for your purpose. It's worth your time. Same with working out. 60 minutes of your time, here or there, small increments. It does wonders. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your results may vary. It takes most people more than a couple sessions, but that's okay. But not to bypass the point. This is a man who has been struggling with this idea of getting his art out into the world for a long time. And a month later, he's got a freaking portfolio out there in the world. I mean, I'm just like blown away by that. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so again, this is the whole point of my talk today was just to help you think about the way we think about how we affect change in our life is wrong. It is, well, I say it's wrong. The model we had was not very good because it doesn't help us change very, very effectively. But there is a new way to do this. And if you adopt that and if you try to work on yourself, you can take yourself wherever you want to go. You can accomplish things that are mind-boggling, that are absolutely impossible for you to conceive right now. And even when you start doing these initial things that have been huge blocks for you, you finally overcome, it opens up vast vistas of possibility you can't even imagine. And coaching is all about creating a possibility in people's lives and creating a better world by having everyone self-actualize. Why are you here on this planet? What are you meant to do? Let's find out. Now, go ahead. Any more questions, or anyone have any questions or anything?